Before I dive in, I wanted to share something with you. Now, I've been speaking with so many entrepreneurs who are feeling that tinge of excitement or the pull to be called in a new direction to launch something so much bigger. And I think this is because a lot of people are really bored, they're feeling burned out, or this thing that they've built, this business that they built, is no longer fueling their creative fire. And so, guess what? They're feeling uninspired and it's becoming harder and harder to keep growing this thing that they built, and they're feeling the call for something more. If any of that has resonated, I want to share something with you today that I am so proud of. It's so amazing. It is a brand new private audio podcast series called Reinvention Season. This experience is designed to help you pivot powerfully without burning it all down. Join me, Tracy Matthews, for this 3-step process to evolve your business and step into your next chapter with clarity and confidence. So all you have to do to get instant access right now is head on over to tracymatthews.com/reinvention season, or check out the link in the show notes and we'll take you right there. Your next big idea is waiting to emerge from you, and it's time. Now is the time. Let's do this. What if the thing that you worked so hard to build is actually the thing that is holding you back? Well, here's the thing. You've been building your business for years. I know you. I see you. I'm right there with you. You're pouring your creative life force into it. You're putting all your energy into it. You have passion and creativity and all the things. And on paper, everything that you once wanted, you achieved, right? But deep down, you're feeling a little restless. You're feeling a desire to maybe expand your business in a different direction, or maybe you're feeling the urge and the need to pivot your business, or maybe you're even kind of feeling like you want to launch a new business and kind of close down the other one. Whatever it is, I see you, I feel you. And it might also be that you are ready to leave your corporate job and go all in on this dream or passion that you have. Now, maybe it's just about the restlessness or feeling uninspired, or maybe you're even feeling trapped, or maybe it's something else beyond that. Maybe you're just feeling inspired to do something bigger and something more. I've been talking to so many people right now, and they have all said the same thing. I am asking myself, what's next? What does this next chapter for me look like? So if you're someone who is basically trying to talk yourself into staying the same, you're saying things like, I should be grateful for this business I've built. But if you're being honest, that spark that you once had is no longer sparky. You're not really nurturing that spark anymore because it feels like it's gone. Today, we're going to really talk about the reality that so many different business owners are experiencing, or they face, but they rarely admit it. What happens when the business that you've built in the way that you built it no longer serves you? How do you know when it's time to evolve? And how do you know, more importantly, how to navigate that without losing everything that you've worked for, confusing the people around you, confusing your customer base, or, just burning the whole thing down? I mean, there's so many directions you can take, but I felt this energy. It is out there. I know I felt it. I've been talking to hundreds of people who are experiencing something similar. And they're ready to do something different. They're ready for a pivot. They're ready to really dive in to all of it. And look, I've been there before. I've been through 5 different types of pivots, reinventions, or expansions of my business over the past 30 years. And I know firsthand how hard it is to make a move when it feels like the stakes are so high. But the truth is that staying stuck is far more expensive than taking a leap and moving forward. So let's talk about what this really looks like. And I'm going to share with you how you can move forward with confidence and clarity and excitement for whatever your next venture is. Hey there, I'm Tracy Matthews. I run several companies, including Flourish and Thrive Academy and Creatives Rule the World, and a bunch of brands under my personal brand, Tracy Matthews. And I have been an entrepreneur for over 30 years. And for the last 12, 13 years, I've been working with business owners and showing them how to reinvent themselves, follow their dreams, and make money doing something that they love. And throughout this process, I've learned a thing or two. And throughout my own reinventions, expansions, pivots, I've learned so much about what to do and what not to do. And because we're talking about expansion and reinvention today, I know how hard it can be to actually get to a place where you're ready to go. Because sometimes, I have to be honest with you, it is a little bit easier to just stay where you are. And if you haven't downloaded it yet, I created this secret podcast series called Reinvention Season. It is for women and female business owners, female founders who are in a season of expansion, in a season of pivoting, or in a season of reinvention, want to step into what's next for them. I guess that's the best way to put it. Elegantly, with grace, and without burning down everything that they've built, so that they're creating something profitable and also not confusing the people around them. So if you want to listen to that, I'm going to have a link in the show notes, or you can head on over to tracymatthews.com/reinvention season and check it out. It's an amazing little mini bingeable mini training / podcast series that you're going to love. In that, I talk a little bit more about my program, The Art of Reinvention, that I'm going to be launching this spring. So whenever you're listening to this episode, definitely check it out. So I've been through so many seasons of reinvention. The first real one was when I left my corporate job. I launched a new career. And then 2 years later, I got divorced. So it was like all this change in a very short period of time. And it was one of the most expansive times in my life, believe it or not, going through so much at that time. It literally put me on a trajectory to being one of the first independent designers on the jewelry scene back in the 90s and early 2000s. And I'm so grateful for that time. It was so exciting. And it was one of those seasons where I just had to learn via trial and error, because there was nothing like online coaching. You didn't have life coaches or business coaches back then. It was all about figuring it out. There were some consultants around, but they typically worked with traditional businesses, not creative businesses. So that was definitely a journey and a ride. And I learned so much in that process. And through the different seasons of reinventions, whether I was, expanding a current business offering, launching different products in my existing business, and trying to figure out, like, how do I market something inside of my existing business that is so different than what I'm actually selling now. Learned so much through that process, for launching my men's jewelry line and launching my fine jewelry line after I'd been known for about 8 years as a contemporary jeweler, designing demi-fine is what they call it now, demi-fine jewelry, demi-fine handmade jewelry on the scene in the market. And that was so much of a huge learning curve of, like, how do you bring your audience along when you're launching a new category? So much learned in that. Then my next reinvention was when the market crashed in 2008 and I made a massive pivot in my business. I decided to close down my jewelry company and launch a new brand, sold in a completely different way. And that was a really interesting time because there was so much going on. I was under extreme financial stress. I was, having to figure out and navigate a lot of different things, liens on my bank accounts because of all the stores filing for bankruptcy and sending notices in to me saying that they weren't going to pay me and they were also going to keep my inventory. That was stressful. And I just learned a lot about navigating extremely challenging situations during that time, and knowing that even when you go through all of that, if you have the right tools, you're going to be okay. And the cool part about that is, on the other side of that, I launched my fine jewelry company, my custom jewelry brand, where a completely different business model. I was selling direct to consumer on the internet, reaching my clients through a completely different modality and figuring that out, and completely reinventing my messaging and bringing my existing customers along for the ride. And then the next reinvention is when my business partner, our co-founder, Robin Kramer, and I decided to split up, and I launched a new brand called Creatives Rule the World, in addition to this amazing company that I've built, Flourish and Thrive Academy. And now I'm in another pivot, which is awesome. And we're going to be learning more about that. I'm going to be taking you along for the journey. And in this pivot, we're going to be rebranding this podcast. I'm really going all in on one of my other companies. And we're also going to be restructuring some things, as you've seen over the years, with what we're doing at Flourish and Thrive Academy. It's all exciting, and I'm so pumped about it. It's just different, and through those processes and through those seasons of reinvention, through those seasons of pivoting, through those seasons of expansion, it's really important to take the time for you and understand that expansion and contraction are just part of running a business. There's always going to be ups and downs. There's always going to be things that go sideways. There are always going to be things that go really well that completely surprise you. And what I want to remind you, that wherever you are in this season, is that you are going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to get on the other side. It's going to be fine. And it's also going to be really fun if you actually lean into it and commit to going all in. So when it comes to going through a process of expansion or pivoting or reinvention, I'm kind of bucketing them all together because they're sisters, right? So you might be expanding your business in a different way, but it feels like doing something new. You might be pivoting your existing business and it's just a different way that you're operating, or you might be completely shutting whatever you're doing down or quitting your job and reinventing yourself and stepping into this new role. So I want to share just some things that people are worried about and kind of how to navigate some of those things. Because I know one of the biggest concerns that people have is that they might go through financial strain. And there are many businesses right now who did, have a decline in sales last year. It wasn't the easiest year, 2024. I know we're in, everything, you never know what's going to happen every single day in the world these days. And that financial strain, sometimes there has to be a correction or a big disruption. This is exactly what happened to me in 2008 in order for things to shift and get back on track. So when it comes to pivoting or reinventing yourself and all the things, I just want to share a little bit about why I've seen people avoid moving forward. So one of the reasons is financial strain. So not everyone experiences this, because if you're in expansion mode, you're probably not experiencing financial strain. But the reason I think people are avoiding moving on to their next chapter or stepping into something bigger or expanding what they're already doing or pivoting is because they're feeling the strain of the last several years. And I know 2024 was a very hard year for a lot of people. Most of the people that I know, their business did less than the year before. Most of the people, not everyone. A lot of the jewelry business owners that we worked with had great years in 2024. And when I look back on my journey as a jewelry business owner, was when my sales were a little bit lower, meaning they were, around the low $100,000 range when I was like in the early stages of business. Even when there were market corrections and things got a little bit shady in the economy, my business still grew because I still had those lower numbers. And I think that happens when your business is smaller. But for people who had bigger businesses, much bigger businesses, I know a lot of my colleagues and peers definitely felt financial strain and like things were moving a little bit backwards, and they were stressed because sales weren't as strong because consumer confidence was down. And so wherever you are on that journey, just know that I understand why you might be worried to pivot. It might feel easier to just keep doing what you're doing, even though your heart isn't in it and you're kind of putting half-assed effort into it. Just realize that you need a change. And in order to change, you're going to need some money to do that, right? But money, even if money already feels tight, I want to remind you that you can't keep staying the same, because someone said this to me, because last year I was on this path to potentially sell Flourish and Thrive Academy, and I turned an offer down. I can't remember if I've shared that with the community yet. I turned an offer down because it didn't feel like it was the right offer. And so instead of selling the company, I decided, in partnering with these people to grow it, I decided to go a different route. And this guy that I was consulting with during this time, one of the guys, he said, well, there's a lot to be said. A lot of people want to sell a company, but selling a company can be really challenging. And sometimes it's not necessarily worth the energy to put into it, because when a founder is not excited about what they're doing anymore, and not to say that I wasn't excited about Flourish and Thrive Academy, it's just parts of what I was doing in the business felt like I was outgrowing it. And so I spent the last several months restructuring things so that I could get back into a sweet spot of where I felt alive in the business. But the point being, he said that if you're not completely aligned with where you're going and what the business is doing, then it becomes harder and harder for you to show up. And that also affects your money. And so if that resonates with you or lands with you, just know that the more you stay in the existing thing in the way that you're doing it, the more of the same kinds of challenges you're going to be experiencing. And so what this inevitably does is it creates a frustrating cycle, because you feel like you're stuck and you need to keep things afloat. And even though it no longer serves you, you're kind of in this limbo stage. And so if any of that lands, just know I get it. And that financial strain or that feeling of not knowing what's next or not knowing how to pivot, is that indecision is actually causing you more financial strain. It's really about showing up and showing the universe that you're committed to something else and taking the risk, because no reward happens without great risk, but taking the risk to invest in yourself and step into your next thing and figuring out a different way. And when I was going through extreme financial hardship back in the day, I had like only $4,000 in my bank account. I remember this, like total money. It felt like a lot of money at the time, but not a lot of money when my rent was $2,000. So that was like stressful. Anyway, heard that I was trying to use my debit card at Whole Foods. I think I shared this in a recent episode, and it was declined. And I'm like, why is it declined? I have tons of money in this account. And I end up like running down the street, hearing that my account had a lien on it from a creditor. I don't know who. And I had to do all these things to get that lien taken off. And it was so stressful. And what my point being in sharing the story is that I figured it out. And the way that I figured it out was by really leaning in and getting scrappy and resourceful and figuring out all of the different ways that I could call in cash and money. I ended up very shortly thereafter landing a really great gig with a $400 million jewelry company that I was getting paid several $1,000s a month to freelance design for them. I started getting some of my ideal clients coming into me. I very quickly after that, by getting scrappy, I had multiple sources of revenue to support me during that transition. So what I want to share with you is that there are so many different ways that you can navigate this, especially if you're in a season of feeling like a little bit financially strapped in different ways. So I want you to really put on your thinking cap of all the different ways that you could come up with the funds that you need to support you during this reinvention process. So the next thing that I want to talk about is the fear of feeling like you're going backwards. Because if you're feeling like in order to pivot or reinvent or to step back and descale your company a little bit, to think about what you need to do in order to grow, I get that it might feel uncomfortable. I get that it might feel like it's going backwards. And you might even say, I don't care what other people think. But, in a way you do. It's human nature. That's what people, consider. They don't want to go backwards. And so you might have this inner dialogue like, am I just going backwards after working so hard for so long? And what are people going to think of me? So if you have a fear of actually making the pivot because you don't want to disappoint others, but you also feel like it's a personal failure, then deep down, this is an opportunity for you to just check in. One of the people that I interviewed recently said, I know that I have to go backwards in order to move forward, but something feels weird, or there's this weird perception about me having to go backwards in order to move forward. And that totally lands with me because I've been restructuring things and stepping back and scaling back. And I've heard so many people doing this. And a lot of it comes to the idea you've been working so hard for so long that you've gotten yourself to this place of burnout and it just doesn't feel aligned anymore. And sometimes you just have to step back a little bit and descale your business or go backwards in order to rebuild. And that is totally normal. There's nothing to be ashamed about for that. And the thought of undoing all of that work and maybe stepping back from success a little bit feels like you're erasing part of your identity. But here's the thing. In any sort of evolution of you, there's this great quote, and I'm going to probably say this wrong, by Anais Nin. And it goes like this. There came a day when the wrist to remain tight in the bud became too hard. And what that means is that, I'm probably missing some of it, is that a flower that's in a bud is really wound tight, right? And then at a certain point, it has to expand and grow, right? Because if it doesn't, it will die. If it doesn't expand and grow, it will die. And this is the same thing for all of us here who are in a season of reinvention or growth or expansion. It's like you have to grow. If you don't, guess what? Parts of you will start to feel dead and you'll just be carrying it around. And so I said this on a podcast. I've been on a lot of podcast interviews lately. And one of the things that has been really powerful is that a lot of people are in this season where they are having a little bit of an ego death, and parts of you are going to fizzle out and fade away, but that's okay, because this new version of you that you're building through this resilient process is like everything, right? This is where you get to shine and be you. So the next part of this is feeling uncertainty or change. Now, uncertainty, or variety as it's also called, is one of the 6 human needs, and it is important for a lot of people. In fact, creativity and building something new all is founded on this idea of uncertainty and variety. So it is a really important part of the process. And if you breathe into it, can be super exciting part of the process. So if you feel the urge to make a change, but you're unsure of what that change should look like, or that you feel like there's this push pull between the desire to start something new and the comfort that you already have, well, this is for you. When I was doing my market research interviews for the Art of Reinvention, I was talking with all types of business owners. And one of these business owners, she has a very successful business. She has no interest in pivoting in her business, but she does want to expand it. She wants to launch a completely new, different type of offering out that's a offshoot of the business to mentor people in her industry. It's a little bit of a different type of business than what we talk about over here. But one of the things that she continued to say is like, I keep trying to work on this thing, but I don't really know what to do. And I'm not sure how to organize it. So I keep just reverting back to what I know because it's comfortable, it's easy. And even my business doesn't even need me anymore. And I don't even know where I fit in it. And so there's this feeling like, I want to do this thing. I want to expand and grow. I want to launch this new offer, but I don't know how to do it because I never done that before. And also, I want someone to show me or hold my hand through the process and or even hold me accountable for getting the thing done. Now, I recently did this. I worked with a coach to hold me accountable to create this new offer. And I did it on purpose. It was a huge investment. I did it on purpose though, because I knew that if I didn't, I was going to keep reverting back to what I knew and continue to do these things that were burning me out, and my health was going to decline. I probably would be broken up from Jason right now because it was affecting our relationship so much. And a lot of these other things in my life would have been affected, and I'm unwilling to do that anymore. And so I knew that in order to launch this thing that's been calling on my heart, I have to step into it. And the exciting part about it is that you're going to see so many cool things coming from me, so many creative projects from me this year that are going to really support you in your business journey while keeping my existing business going, which is awesome. And I'm very excited about it. But it was very hard because uncertainty can feel really overwhelming, especially if you're in the most uncomfortable place in your life and you know that you want to keep moving forward and you're not sure how to do it. So if you're left wondering, like, what's next? How do I move forward when the path ahead feels uncertain and unclear and uncomfortable? Well, for me, what worked was having the accountability. And I'm going to share with you just a process later on that I can support you with if this is something that really is landing with you and you want to launch the new thing. Now, another thing that has come up a lot in my exploration, in my own personal journey, is that when you're successful, you've been in business for a while, or even if you're making a pivot in your career, you feel like you're letting people down, right? People in your family, maybe people on your team, people in your community, all of these things, right? You feel like you're letting people down by making a change. This really impacted my business. I ended up keeping offers going that I knew a long time ago needed to be restructured or rethought, or we retired them and brought them back. And they're great. They're amazing. But in order for us to really streamline what we're doing over here, I kept doing things because of my team wanting to do it, but it wasn't for the higher good or the better good of the company. And so if you're wondering like why we are scaling some things back and restructuring everything, it's because of this. Like, I kept it going for a long time because I didn't want to let people down. But I also know that in order to move forward, we have to restructure things so that we can rebuild. That's just a part of it. And so one of the biggest things was that I felt this huge weight of responsibility for keeping the business going at the level that I was keeping it going to be able to support the team that I'd hired. And it was getting me into a really challenging place that I'm still working through. And the reason why I'm sharing this is very personal information. We're almost on the other side, but the reason why I'm sharing this is because when you are people pleasing and doing stuff for other people and it's not in alignment with you, and you're afraid that, of making tough choices, like maybe reducing your team size or restructuring a program so it could be more profitable, but then inevitably losing people who have been team members or coaches from you, or reducing their hours significantly. I mean, there's so many different scenarios. It's not an easy thing, and you're going to let people down. Like, I let a lot of people down, and I have people who were coaching for me for a long time who decided to leave, and that's okay. We have new people coming in and all those things. And it's hard because like I I love these people. It's like I appreciate everything that they've done. And my team is like my family. And so it's like so hard when you're in a position where you have to make a move and you should have done it sooner and you didn't do that. So I get and understand if you're in a position where you need to step back and had to make some tough choices and cut things way back. And it's just part of running a business. And it's hard and it's sad and it's not an easy thing to do, but also it's a necessary thing to do for you to get to your next thing. Because if you're just doing your business and growing your business for other people and it's not serving you, then it's not going to serve you. And so part of this is the process of stepping back to rebuild. And I think another thing that I've heard over and over again is that a lot of people are in this season of reinvention or expansion because they're either bored or burnout. I've talked about the burnout thing a couple of times. Boredom creeps in because you're doing the same thing over and over again. And someone said to me, making the same thing over and over again is boring, right? So I think a lot of makers think that, it's like producing the same thing over and over again feels so boring. So it's the same thing about rebranding. It's like, as long as I can think about keeping my creative component and the design component alive, then I can just nail it and it's going to be awesome. But if I don't feel creative and I'm not in a space where I'm expanding my creativity, or any of us, not just me, I'm saying like the collective I, then that burnout's going to creep in. Because when you're doing things that feel redundant and they aren't aligned and they aren't exciting anymore, it's hard to get motivated. And so entrepreneurs, as I mentioned earlier, we truly crave variety. We need to feel creatively inspired, or else we start sabotaging what we've done and change the things by shaking up the offers that are working, by mixing things up, by tweaking this or tweaking that, or retiring this and retiring that. And that's okay. But sometimes things are good. And, Jason used to say to me all the time, Tracy, your business is great. Why don't you just focus on creating something new or put your creative energy into a new project? And that's exactly why I am launching some new programs this year. And I launched a new program earlier this year called Your Year to Thrive. It's an incredible business planning program. If you haven't checked it out, definitely do. And I'm launching the Art of Reinvention and sneaking in a couple of other things too, which is so exciting because that variety is really important. And one of the things that I heard from a lot of people is that sometimes where you started is not where you're going. And so you might have outgrown the market, or, I know that this happened to me when I was designing beaded jewelry. I really wanted to expand into handmade jewelry, and I was great at both. The challenge was that because I started my business with a cold fusion brand, none of the stores that I was selling to knew me for this new type of jewelry that I designed. And so I had to take a risk, launch into my handmade jewelry. And inevitably, I did lose some of my clients over time. And because we both kind of outgrew each other, but I also had outgrown that offering. And every step of the way, every time I expanded, when I launched my men's line, when I launched my fine jewelry lines, all of these things, I outgrew the existing market that I was working in. So I wanted to expand that to not only feel creatively inspired, but also to recognize for myself, this is the huge aha I had, is that staying in the same place just isn't sustainable. But the thought of pivoting felt super overwhelming. So if you're in that spot where you're like, I can't stay here anymore because whatever it is that I'm doing is no longer aligned, it's not aligned with my market, it's not aligned with where I'm going, then it's time to step up. So you might be wondering, what's the answer? So I want you to just think through, like, what is not aligned anymore? Like, what have I outgrown? Where am I feeling burned out? What am I afraid of? And what could I do to bridge the gap during this time to help create a little bit more financial security for me so that I can move in that new direction and also get the accountability and the support that you need to actually grow? And so I'm going to share with you a little bit more in the show notes. You're going to see a link to 2 amazing resources. The first one is my secret podcast or private podcast series. It's called Reinvention Season. In that podcast series, I go in depth and talk a little bit more about the reinvention process and how I've done it so many times and the steps that you can take if you're in a pivot or a reinvention. And then I'm also launching a new program that I've mentioned a few times. It's called The Art of Reinvention. I have already been selling slots in the early bird, and I want to share that with you because if you're interested in it, you can fill out an application right now and get in for $2,000 off. This is a 12-week high touch experience with me, working directly with me to help you walk you through your reinvention season. So whether it's expanding a new offering in your business or launching a completely new business and shutting your existing business down, or whether it's making a hard pivot in your business and bringing your audience along for the ride, or even, quitting your corporate career and understanding how can I package my skills and my gifts into something that can be sold for consulting or services, I am here for it. And this is just an incredible program. I'm so excited about it because it really leans into my natural talents and gifts, and I get to shine. And I'm so excited to share those with you and help support you in your process so that you're creating a bigger vision for your life and a vision beyond your vision, turning that into things that can make you money and scale that feel completely aligned and exciting for you to sell, and then help you cultivate how do you bring people along, create the brand journey, and bring people along that brand journey as you evolve, because it's a powerful process and just the most fun thing to do. So the key right now for anyone who's feeling a little burnout, a little bit like it's time for a pivot, a little bit, wherever you are on that journey, is to stay excited and creative in your work and find something to make change happen that matches and aligns with where you want to go and who you want to serve. So if this is something you're wanting to learn more about, check out the show notes or head on over to tracymatthews.com/art of reinvention. Fill out that application right there. If you're listening to this later, that link might redirect directly to a landing page where you're going to see more information about the program. So thank you so much for being here today. This is Tracy Matthews signing off. Until next time. Ciao. What if the thing that actually made you successful is the thing that is holding you back? You've built something incredible. You have made an impact. But now, every time you sit down to work on your next big idea, you find yourself falling back into what's comfortable. Not because it's right, but because it's familiar. Does that sound familiar? Well, if that's you, you are not alone. And that's exactly why I created a brand new program called The Art of Reinvention. It's my 12-week program designed to help you gain clarity on your next big move, create an offer or business that excites you again, and brings your audience along for the ride without burning down what you've built. I know because I've been through this process 5 times, and I am literally an expert at guiding you through this. So if any of this lands, I'd love for you to check out The Art of Reinvention. Head on over to tracymatthews.com/art of reinvention and join us for our next cohort, which is starting soon.